So the first thing that I'm going to show is changing tips. So it comes with one already on there and 5 extra tips. And when I got mine, I was a little confused about just how to do this. I mean, it's pretty straightforward, but I don't think I recognized the parts I was looking at. So basically, you just unscrew this part here. And then this sleeve and collar come off. After that, this comes off. Now this might be stuck here, and I thought I was pulling wires or something off of here, but no, this just pulls straight off, and this is the way it looks underneath. So that's that tip. This is the original tip that came on it. I'm going to put that on, and then I'm going to put the sleeve on, and then we'll put the collar on. Collar screws it down. Now that little white end, I believe, is the temperature sensor and heating element that goes in there, which I'm going to get back to in a minute because it works a little differently than I suspected it would work. So this is the original tip, which is a sort of a sharp cone, and it's not the finest point. There's a much sharper one here, so it depends on how tiny a wire or circuit you need to solder and how small it is. So a very tiny wire or circuit trace, you would use the skinny one. The thicker the wire that you're soldering, the thicker the end you're going to use. And depending on what you're soldering, a different shape tip might match up better. Obviously, you don't want to have a tip of the wrong size. If it's too small, it'll take forever to heat. If it's too big, you're going to have a mess getting solder over areas you don't want it. So let's put this tip aside for a minute and plug the unit in. Alright, it's plugged in. Now I'm going to turn it on. Now, right now, it was set to 200, and you can see how fast it goes to 200. But one thing I want to point out is that is the sensor inside. It still takes a varying amount of time between when the internal sensor hits the target temperature and when the entire metal tip reaches that temperature. And you can tell because when you go to solder, let's take some solder here. So I'm touching this now. Nothing's happening. And I think it could be that the 200 just isn't hot enough. It's also possible that that outer temperature of that metal hasn't even reached 200 yet. Like inside where the sensor is 200. So this is misleading because it reaches its target very fast, but yet the inside of that isn't the same as the outside. So I'm going to turn the temperature up. We'll make this 300. And by the way, this is in centigrade. Make this 300, roughly. And now I'm seeing some smoke come off of it. So it's definitely getting hotter. And let's see if that melted the solder. Okay, so the other thing is, the thicker the tip, like this is one I was using because the thing I solder most frequently are these XT60 connectors for my RC models, and that's pretty thick, and I usually solder anywhere between a 14 to a 10 gauge wire to these things, and those little things like the skinny tip like this would take a really long time to get all this stuff heated up and melt all that solder in there and all. At least at that temperature, you see, like nothing's happening right now. So I can always dial the temperature up. We'll dial it up to, we'll say 400. Centigrade. I mean, that would be another way to do it. Again, I believe that the temperature of the it's starting to melt now, so that's melted. Of the inside, it gets there faster than the outside. So again, you do have a wide range. You can take this up to 480 centigrade if you have to. However, you got to be careful because you will oxidize your tips. They won't last as long as if you use too much heat unnecessarily. So I'm just putting a little of that on there. Now, before this is my first soldering station. I just had soldering irons before. And it's nice to have everything right there. I got two different thickness reels of solder. It comes with this 0.8 millimeter reel here, but it's not rosin core. And you got the metal shavings here that you can push this in to clean the tip. And then you got this sponge. It was interesting. I just poured some water on this sponge and it instantly went whoop and expanded as soon as it got wet. So you could, clean that off like so to make sure your tip's clean. Again, I'm going to tin this so that it doesn't oxidize the tip. And it's nice also to have everything, it weighs enough that when you put your soldering iron in the holder, it stays put instead of worrying about it shifting around and maybe the tip of the hot soldering iron is going to hit something. You got two different methods to clean it. You can adjust the temperature. You can change the reading from centigrade. I got 274 centigrade. I can flip it over. It's actually 525 Fahrenheit. I'll move it back to centigrade. It will auto shut itself off when it's done. And you do have all these different tips to use depending on the shape and thickness of the material you need to solder. Now, for my purposes of doing these XT60 connectors, I think I'm still going to use my Weller soldering iron because I need a lot of heat and I need it fast, and for something that thick, this works well. I thought that might work better. For this purpose, I don't really think it is working better, but definitely for any finer work, smaller wires or whatever, this is going to give me a lot more precise control over what I'm doing. So, I don't know if you found this information useful. I hope you did. But this is my initial impression and experience with my first soldering station, the Lonove model number 926 LED V3. Thanks for watching.